And welcome back to another episode, or another RWBY fanfiction reading. We're with It's More, an odd relationship, uh, by HauntingHydrex. Yeah, the aftermath. Uh, so this chapter starts off kind of stupidly, but you know. Months had passed since that night, and many a date had been done. Yang again had dragged them off to another bar for their friendship night. It was stupid as it sounded. I blinked open my eyes and sat up. It ended like the first one. Ruby collapsed in my bed, me in a makeshift one. Next to me lay Ruby still asleep. I didn't want to wake her up, but I did have work. Sighing, I grabbed my pencil and paper. I wrote a small note for her, placed a glass of water and 2 tablets on the desk next to her, and got dressed. I shut the door. When I left and locked it, I slowly started to head to work. I made the same trip to the shop and walked in. I walked into the shop and pulled on the apron. Ying was there holding her head as she took orders from the customers. Weiss was sitting at the table opposite to the counter, drinking a latte, from what I could see. Every time Yang would either wince or flinch at something, Weiss's face changed to a small amount of concern. Oh, hey, Blake. Head still hurt? Yeah, a lot. What happened with Ruby? Weiss said she didn't find at home. I still don't know where she lives, so I took her mine. After another small staring contest with a mirror, she collapsed in my bed. I laughed lightly. Yang did too, turning to take an order from someone. I went back to make the drinks. I was passing them out when I was passing them put when I got a text. Hey Blakey, sorry about last night. I got drunk and probably did something bad. Anyway, do you mind if I stay at your stay and maybe tomorrow? I don't seem to remember where I put my keys, so I'm going to get new ones. The guy at the shop said it may take a while, so mind if I stay? I smiled at the sweet text, knowing that Ruby was probably worried about staying at mine. I replied quickly. Of course, I don't mind. You can use the shower and some of my clothes, and help yourself to my cookie stash. Cookie stash? Yeah, because I want your cookies. That doesn't make sense. I know. Anyway, thank you so much. You won't regret it. I smiled and turned back to making more of the drinks. I passed them around until no one was in the shop or was just leaving. Weiss was still there. Me and Yang were messing with Weiss when I got another text. Blakey, yes. Would you be upset if I ate all your cookies? No, I wouldn't. I would like you to tell me if you did, though. I may or may not have eaten them. Thanks for telling me. I will buy some on the way back, I replied, slipping my phone into my pocket. I waited and waited until my time here was up. Watching the clock, I waited till the time hit 4. It ticked over to 4, so I shot up. And I had shot up. I don't know. End of my shift. I have to get cookies and go home. Bye, I said, pounding off. Meanwhile, Yang and Weiss just laughed. So she likes Ruby. Yeah, she does. Did you see the way she blushed while texting her? I was walking home with the cookies and other things in my hands when I got a call. Hey, Blakey. Yes, Ruby. Where are you? On my way back. Why? Because it's dark and I'm scared. I smiled and couldn't help but picture Ruby under some blankets with the phone on her hands. Yeah, that makes sense. Why are you scared? Because I don't like being alone. You're acting like you need me to be around. I do, she mumbled. I couldn't quite hear what she said. Speak up? Nothing. Get back soon, she said before cutting off the call. I sighed and slipped and slipped my phone in my pocket. I was the block when Three Eyes came around the corner. Wow, would you look at that? She is hot, they commented. I scoffed and carried on walking. Hey girl, I ignored his call and carried on walking. I heard footsteps get louder and louder behind me. They gripped on my arm and spun to face. What? They gripped on my arm and spun to face them. I was outside my apartment block and was either going to get robbed or killed, I was sure. I started to panic. My breathing was getting faster and faster. I could feel the sweat on my palms and arms. What's your name? Piss off. That's rude. You shouldn't talk to me like that. Why is that? Because I will. He was cut off by a furious redhead holding a knife. Well, what? Huh? She shouted, twirling the blade in her fingers freely. Nothing, run! He shouted, quickly sprinting into the alley. I quickly hugged Ruby and cried into her shoulder. I hated it. I really did. It was like a nightmare, but this redhead was my knight in shining armor. She was my protector. I didn't want her to be. I shouted and turned to me. Come on, Blakey, let's get inside, Ruby smiled, holding my hand and taking me up. She didn't let go of my hand until we reached the apartment, much to my sadness. She the door for me! When it was open, the scene in front of me that oh God. When it was open, a scene was in front of me that I hadn't seen in months. Everything was spotless, all the dishes cleaned, all the furniture clean. I turned to Ruby and kissed her full on the lips. I didn't even think about what I was doing, and now I was going to pay the price. I pulled away and held my hands to my mouth. Tears threatened to spill. I felt awful. I didn't think about Ruby's feelings. I clenched my eyes shut, refusing to cry. A couple moments of complete silence passed until two thin arms snaked around my waist and pulled me toward their owner. Hey, Blakey. I am so sorry. She was kissing me, Ruby. The girl who I had loved, who I had was soft but short, a little too short. I was going to ask if you wanted to be my girlfriend when you got home, but I guess you already answered that for me, she said, adding a small giggle to the end. I smiled and turned to hug her. She hugged me back and smiled. Hey, Blakey. Yes, Ruby. I love you. I love you more. I love you most. Damn it, you beat me to it. Ruby smiled and laughed at her antics. I was in heaven. Oh my God. No, not an ad. This is just disappointing. Don't get this app. Wattpad's better. Okay. The Best Awakening. Blake eyes fluttered open as the morning broke. The sun slipped through the gap in her curtains and beamed straight onto her face. She gave out a sigh and sat up, stretching out her arms. She looked next to her to find a small wolf fawn asleep. Her ears were flat against her head. Smiling, Blake slowly climbed out of their bed and walked to the kitchen. While working at various different jobs, Blake had picked up quite a few skills in cooking. Grabbing the nearest frying pan, she cracked 2 eggs inside. Quickly turning on the oven, and she started to cook the meal. Ugh. That was a little disgusting and rude. Ruby's sniffed the air. The minute she awoke, she could smell the food of the gods. Bacon. I'm coming, oh might God of food, she triumphantly thought to herself. She sounded like such a nerd, but she didn't care. Ruby followed her nose to the dining room. On the plate sat all of the food. Blake was sitting across drinking her tea. She seemed to be typing. Ruby smiled and kissed Blake's cheek, surprising the girl. Morning, sleep all right? Yes, Kitty, I did. Eat your breakfast, puppy, Blake quipped back. Ruby stuck her tongue out at words. Say them. Ruby stuck her tongue out at the girl and looked back down at the feast. Just as she was about to dig in, she realized she hadn't said something. Ha, thank you for making me this, she exclaimed, hugging the black-haired girl. Blake chuckled and softly stroked Ruby's ears. The girl practically melted. Go and eat. You have college today, don't you? Ah, I do, Ruby said, sitting down to eat. A couple of minutes later, Ruby was changed and awaiting Blake. The girl was in their bedroom getting dressed. The younger girl rocked on her heels as she waited. This usually happened in the mornings. Blake emerged from the room, keys in hand and bag over her shoulder. Where are you going today, Kitty? I have to do some shopping. Plus, it's our 2-year anniversary of being together tomorrow, so Blake said, knowing the younger had probably forgotten. That's why I brought. That's why I bought your present in advance. Ruby said, skipping to the door. Blake was gobsmacked. Ruby, on time? Who are you and what have you done to my puppy? Blake asked in fake anger. Ruby chuckled and kissed her cheek. Blake smiled and walked out to her car. Ruby's seat. She slipped the keys into the ignition and sped off to the college. Ruby's hand stayed firmly planted on Blake's as they drove. It was times like these that made them relax. They were hand in hand, silently driving. It felt great. Their time was cut short when they finally reached school. Here we are, Ruby. You going to be alright? You ask me this every time we get here. I'll be fine, Ruby assured, kissing her lover's cheek, nose, then mouth. I will see you later, Ruby smiled, climbing out the car. She watched Root walk down the stone pathway up to the main hall. She always did, and on the off chance that someone wanted to pick on her delicate flower. Apparently, this was one of those days. Oh my god. Okay. Apparently, this was one of those days. As Ruby innocently skipped to the hall, 4 older, stronger-looking boys stepped out from the building. Ruby hadn't noticed and she was busy waving to Blake. Blake had waved back, but she was watching carefully. Ruby turned back to see the 4 boys. Hey, fellas, can I get past, please? Who are you waving to? Your mom? The one on the far left said, the rest laughing. Ruby chuckled, being too oblivious to notice the insult. No, that's my girlfriend. Now, can I get past now? Your girlfriend? Yeah, the four boys broke our... Yes, our laughing, that makes sense. Grabbed a hold on Ruby's ear. And what the heck is that? What is that word? I'm sorry. The girl to the floor. The girl to the floor. Filthy faunus, he said, spitting toward her as he did. That did it for Blake. She marched off. What? She turned off her car, locked it, and marched over to them. She could feel her anger boiling over. Oh, look, here she comes. The boy on the right said. Blake steps over to them and instantly crashed down to Ruby. Are you alright? Yes, I'm fine, don't worry. We were just teaching this girl a lesson for disrespecting you. Blake stood up and looked over at the boy. And in what sense did she disrespect me? She said that a young girl like you were going out with What am I even... Okay. She said that a young girl like you were going out with a faunus freak like her. He said before being cut off by a single punch from the older girl. Shame, it seems that this girl is going out with a faunus, because so is she. What? Blake giggled, pulling off a ribbon. She turned to help up Ruby. The ringleader, who she had punched him to... seemed too out cold. The rest of the boys were trying to awake him. That was awesome, Blake. Thanks. But next time that happens, you say, understand what? Yes. In the other's cheek. Go off to class. I'll see you after classes. Blake said, kissing the girl's head. She turned to go back to her car and Ruby spoke up. I love you. I love you too, pup. My God. The end of this tale. Oh, this is getting interesting. Oh, alright. It's almost over. And this chapter is stupid. Oh, I actually have no idea, but many years after. Ruby, yes, Blakey, are you ready? Nearly. Blake impatiently tapped her foot on the floor as she waited for Ruby. It being their 2-year anniversary of being married. She wanted to spend the day with her. After another minute, Ruby came downstairs, ready. She was wearing a red summer dress, rose pattern scattered around the hem of the dress. Ruby, you look amazing, Blake said, kissing her wife on the cheek. Ruby smiled and kissed her back. Thank you, Blake, as do you. Shall we go? We shall. The first place that they had gone to was a leisurely stroll through the nearby park. Ruby was twirling and skipping ahead of Blake, a smile constantly on her face. They were slowly reaching the fountain, so Ruby decided to catch up. Though when Ruby asked her to sit on the edge, she refused as if one touch of the water would end her. Come on, you won't die. Still, Blake replied, choosing to sit on the bench opposite her. How do you shower if you can barely sit on the edge of a fountain? Ruby asked, curious. That's pouring on top of me, then I can get out and dry. If I fall in that, then my clothes will be soaked all day. Blake replied matter-of-factly. Are you messing with me? No. Well, I love it. That's because you're a dog. A wolf, actually. Same family roots, Blake quipped back. I'm not a plant, Ruby said, barely hiding her own laughter from the terrible pun. I'm not hugging you to death right now, Blake said, crossing her arms and looking away. You could hear the small whimpers from the girl. She knew what she was trying. The puppy eye trick which had worked for all the years they had been together. Today she wasn't going to give in to her power. She shut her eyes tight, refusing to look at her, but the whimpering was getting to her, and she opened her eyes to see something that would make anyone melt. Ruby had her ears flat against her head, eyes up at her and small tears at the edge of her eyes. The look alone would get her out of any situation. Probably she was trying with all the look. It was a super weapon. It should be illegal. Come on, Blake, you can resist. Just don't look into her cute, adorable eyes. Stop, you can do it. She couldn't fight it anymore. Fine, I forgive you, Blake said, opening her arms. Ruby dove toward her, hugging her tightly. I knew you'd come around, Ruby exclaimed into Blake's shoulder. Only because of your power. Oh, hush, kitty. You too, pup. Weird nicknames, and I don't like saying them. The next stop was a cake shop. Ruby was smiling like an idiot, looking around all of the cakes. It was a small store. Ruby had worked part-time Blake had worked part-time in the shop while Ruby was away, keeping her eye out for any cake she may want. Blake, look at this one. It's decorated like a huge cookie, Ruby beamed, pulling Blake over to see it. It was just like Ruby had described it. It seemed a bit plain looking to Blake, but if it was going to make her beautiful wife happy, then she would get it. She waved over a nearby worker. Hello, miss. I'd like the cookie cake, please. Blake said, politely smiling at Ruby. Ruby smiled back and hugged her from the side. Yes, miss, she replied, quickly grabbing the cake and placing it inside a white box. Could we have it stay here until we need to collect it? Blake asked, and the worker nodded. Who's it for? For Miss Rose, she replied, her heart fluttering after calling herself that. It had been 2 years, but it made her feel so proud. Okay, Miss Rose, it will be here waiting for you. Have a nice day. You too, miss. Blake smiled, waving as they left. As soon as they left, Ruby jumped into Blake's arms. Thank you, she repeated into Blake's shoulder, smiling. Anything for my wife, she replied, kissing Ruby's head. Ruby blushed lightly and climbing off her black-haired partner. She placed a kiss on her wife's lips. Blake wandered in the direction of the next place. After burning a couple of hours, Ruby and Blake found a place to eat. It was quite fancy. All of the waitress and waiters were in formal wear. They found a table and quickly sat at it, ordering their drinks. Today has been great so far, Ruby commented, gently rubbing her thumb lightly over the back of her partner's hand. It has. Only the best for my little pup. I'm not that small. Have you ever been taller than me? Ruby became quiet for a couple seconds. No. Then then you're still my little pup. Not fair, kitties. They chatted for a couple minutes until their drinks were served and their food orders. Why do you always have tuna or some assortment of fish? Ruby question. I enjoyed it. Why else? It's so icky. Yuck. Blech. Alright, enough with the noises. I know you don't like it. It is, though. Opinion, Ruby. Fact. They continued to playfully argue until their food arrived. Each plate being placed in front of the consumers. Enjoy, the waiter said, quickly leaving. 2 hours passed when they had finally left. That place was awesome. It was quite good. You drains my energy, drains me. Yep, that's mean. It's a fact, pup. Hush, kitty. Even with their bickering, love still surrounded the strange couple. An odd relationship indeed, but it worked. No matter who told them it wouldn't, they had proved them wrong. Many days of pure happiness and sadness will lay ahead of them, but with persistence, they will overcome anything, any obstacle. That's what made them a strong couple, an unbreaking bond. 3 words will surround them forever. I love you. Okay, so that is the end of the story. The end of an our relationship. I'm done. Next time, something different that I don't know. Oh, okay, well, actually, it's pretty obvious based on the title, but that's not, you won't know until the next video. Words are difficult.